call the roll.
Mr. Rambacker. Mr. Harrison.
Here.
Mr. Javises. Mr. Crawford.
Here.
Mr. Wolf and Mr. Seaberger.
I'm here. I don't know that we have much of an agenda other than work session, but are there any changes proposed to the agenda?
No changes.
Okay, then I'm going to skip statement of duties and skip to unfinished business, and we'll go to new business, which is a work session on adding a new planned mixed-use development, the R7 PUMD, and at this point, I think what I'd like to do is have discussion among the zoning director and members, and after some of that discussion, if either of the two audience members wanted to chime in, they will have that opportunity.
Okay.
So, who wants to go first?
I have a fundamental question.
All right.
I think it's fundamental. It's my understanding that what we're kind of doing here is we're trying to create a new, very flexible zoning criteria, so allow the Board of Trustees to, in certain circumstances, have a wide range of discretion to do what they want to do.
To a point.
Well, to a point, I know, that's what I'm trying to get to is, and the whole idea, I just so I'm clear, I'm not against that necessarily, I just so I'm clear, I mean, the whole idea of having zoning, there, Mr. Wolf is here, so I'll mark him as present.
No problem. Hello. Close up middle branches, let's go now.
I guess I just want to make sure that's the fundamental purpose of this, is to give the trustees a lot more discretion in certain circumstances to do what they want to do with a particular piece of property. Which is sort of contrary to the whole idea of what you do with zoning, I would think. Anyway, that's my question, and again, I'm not proposing that I'm against it, I just want to make sure that that's all that's our goal here.
I don't see it as giving the trustees the flexibility. I see it as creating a zone where a developer has some flexibility due to unique circumstances of a site or other conditions that make it either inefficient or inappropriate to strictly apply the other classifications and allow some plan to be submitted for consideration. It's not to the trustees, it's to, an application would be to us to change a district to be an R7. I don't know that we're necessarily going to be designating R7 districts on the map at this point. It would be up to an applicant that may own a parcel in another designation to come to us and say, hey, this designation that you've assigned us already isn't working, it's inefficient, it's inappropriate for other reasons. We have a specific plan we'd like to submit, and we'd like to apply for this R7 designation, at which time they come in here, they submit a plan, it goes through regional planning, it goes back to the trustees as with other plan unit developments, and it gets attention, and it's flexible in that way, but not flexible in that anybody can do it at any time and the trustees have complete discretion. I don't see it as that.
One of the things that we were aiming for was the developers are going back to, instead of the suburban sprawl, they're bringing everybody back into central areas. And when they do that, they'll take a dilapidated area or several buildings and remodel them. They'll have businesses on the first floor, apartments, condos on the second. They will have different types of businesses that our zones currently couldn't fit into.
Tom, let me ask this question of you, because I haven't done this. So let's take a real-world example, which is the matter we talked about 2 weeks ago. If this R7 were in existence right now, would the proposal that was submitted to us fit within that without the need for substantial variances?
Yes.
Okay. So it would open the door, although they'd still have to convince, well, at least persuade the regional planning and our commission and then convince the trustees.
They have a given amount of acreage, they have a given area to work in, and they have to try and build what suits them in that area, or suits us in that area. And I think this particular zone, R7 PMUD, would work with that.
Okay, let me ask another question, and that is this. Do you view this proposed R7 as something that could be acted upon at our next meeting, which would be on the 10th of August? Would we have time to advertise that and get it on the agenda?
We have already advertised. We had to get it in today by 2 o'clock. So I advertised that meeting. I need to get this last text portion to the regional planning so they can get it to their August 8th meeting.
All right.
For approval for our meeting on August 10th.
Okay, and then the trustees, the first opportunity to consider the text amendment would be how many weeks there?
It would be the last meeting of the month, the fourth Tuesday of August. They would have a resolution to set a hearing for the following meeting, which would be the second Wednesday
Of September?
of September.
All right, let me just bear with me for a second. Okay, I see September 14th. All right.
Is that the second?
Yes.
Okay.
It is. And then would this be subject to referendum, or could it,
No, it would be subject to a referendum. We'd have to wait 30 days after that for final conclusion.
okay, now, still sticking to the real world and the proposed Oakwood Square project, would, okay, 30 days, let's take a look at the calendar here. All right, so it would become effective on October 13, a day after our normally scheduled meeting. I'm trying, if I were the folks who want to redevelop Oakwood Square, I mean, is there a way to time this that they can take advantage of this? So they could maybe come in under this designation and then not have to go to BZA and beg for some variances?
We're mandated to follow a timeline,
I know you
and based on, yes, we could, if we have an emergency meeting with the trustees, and we can get them together prior to the second Tuesday of the month, maybe the week prior, and that would let them fit in.
Let me just backtrack a minute to the posture of how this is all happening. And just to refresh some recollections, maybe those that weren't here last time for the last meeting, we had an application 2 weeks ago that got tabled at the request of the applicant to be heard at the August meeting, which is going to be in a couple of weeks. And the subject had to do with a development project at the Oakwood Square. Coincidentally, I asked about an issue of whether or not we had a mixed use or whether there was anything in the works about any mixed use classifications coming, and our zoning director informed us at that time, which was the first time I'd ever heard it, that there was something in the works within the township to come up with an R7 designation, and some language had been already bantered about at the township level, unbeknownst to us, about making such a designation, and there was some discussion about the utility of bringing those two matters concurrently for efficiency of hearing, that we could hear those simultaneously. I just want to go on the record as saying, I'm not seeing this as necessarily the Oakwood Square classification. I'm seeing this as a mixed-use classification that would generally benefit our township. I'm not looking at this as spot zoning for Oakwood Square, okay? And I want to be clear that although we were receptive to discussing that, this board did not initiate the creation of the classification. It was done within the township structure, and I believe you and the trustees have been working on this, right, Tom? Okay, so my question is, the application that's been, or the matter that's been advertised for next meeting is, I believe, the continuation or the rehearing of the last application,
Yes.
plus a new application which is initiated by the trustees to change and create a new zoning application. Okay, so,
Well, it's actually being initiated by us,
Yes, that was.
Right.
the way it's being formulated now. Not the
Oh.
trustees, by us. This would be us saying, here's what we want to propose. Everything else you say, I agree with you, but I think that there may have been some start to all this at the trustee level and the administrative people, but the idea was we're allowed.
at this point, we're taking the ball and running.
Well, we were
with it.
saying, look, is there some way we can maybe make this easier and more effective for everybody and implement something that will help the township down the road? Maybe this would be a good time to do that, and we can do this on our own initiative, so that we've kind of taken the initiative.
Picked it up, yes.
All right,
picked it up.
okay, so let me ask this question. Have the trustees or the township law director looked at this text at all?
Yes, he's looking at it right now.
Okay, so we don't have an opinion from...
We do not yet.
Where did it come from? Now, where'd you get to this?
It's compiled
Is it
from,
composite from somewhere else?
yes, from many different jurisdictions.
Was it tailored in any way to meet the tabled application from 2 weeks ago?
No, it was tailored to meet what generally is seen as the direction that developers are going.
Okay.
Just out of curiosity, what name the one or two closest jurisdictions on which this R7 is based?
Jackson Township, probably the closest.
It's close.
There are other jurisdictions out of state.
The solar energy thing has a different typeface, so I'm guessing you pulled that from somewhere else.
Does it really?
Yeah. It's okay, I don't
I
mind.
don't know why it does.
Just guessing it came from somewhere else.
We had to do that because it was so brightly...
Arizona.
And just for the board's information, I promised after the last meeting to do a little bit of research and forward Tom some resource materials that I found helpful. And I did find an article online, usefulcommunitydevelopment.org, and it's an independent entity, and they had a nice article on mixed-use development and the benefits that it delivers. And I forwarded that to Tom.
Very helpful.
I mean, the nicety of it is summarized in the first couple of paragraphs where it says mixed-use development means a building or complex which includes a mixture of land uses. Typically, the term is used when residential uses are combined with office, commercial, entertainment, childcare, civic uses such as schools, libraries, or other governmental services. mixed-use zoning districts may be huge in scale or combined to one small site. The common pattern exists of storefronts or restaurants with apartments on second and third levels. Mixed-use development is currently in vogue among planners because the compact, efficient land use pattern offers residents an excellent opportunity for short commutes to work and for convenience in shopping. And basically, they look like, some of them look like old storefronts that were maybe Main Street in a smaller community where there were storefronts that are now being commercialized, and then above it is residential.
Yeah.
That's one type of mixed use. But certainly that's not the only way. That the idea is to increase walking and pedestrian traffic and reduce vehicular traffic and allow the uses to be coordinated, where maybe independently, if they were developed, they would be uncoordinated and really inefficient. So that being said, I'd be glad to share this with anybody who wants to look at it. I did also find some articles. City of Tucson had an interesting mixed use setup, which I forwarded to Tom. So did Seattle, and I think there was one in Nashville or Tennessee.
In Tennessee,
Yeah.
I think it was Nashville.
But again, these are fairly progressive communities that are seeing the benefit of having this kind of classification. And it seemed the time to be looking at what other areas are doing.
The other specific question I had is, it seems we talk about 2 contiguous acres on page 2 under section 709.2. Are we actually looking to do such small parcels as part of this?
It could happen, yes.
But it could happen. Is that something we want? And if we make it so small, are we maybe encouraging somebody to take a big parcel like this and chop it into a bunch of little ones?
No,
Piecemeal it?
You could take a section that is deteriorating. The owner only has a small portion of it, and they begin to revitalize that area by working on this small section. Then someone else can come in and begin to revitalize next door.
Okay, well, is 2 acres consistent with what these other, the minimum acres that these other places are using?
Most of them did not go under 2. There were some that went under 2 acres. Most of them were at 2 acres or above.
That just seems kind of small, to me, that's all.
Well, in an urban area, it wouldn't be very small.
Yeah. That's just the thing that sort of stood out.
Again, gentlemen, this is something that the wording you can change if that's, you feel that's too small.
And personally, I think that the purpose clause is extremely helpful in identifying what criteria any site would have to meet, whether it were a 2 or a 52. If you can't meet the purpose clause or some of the criteria there in your 2, and you're obviously chopping it up to avoid otherwise appropriate development standards of another classification, I think that's the situation where we would nix it at this point, or the trustees would, or we'd get a negative recommendation from regional planning if it came to that. So to me, it doesn't seem to stretch things too much to enlarge the scope of possibilities by saying it could be as small as 2, if in the right circumstance. But
It's
again, our other PUDs say 20 acres is the smallest. And so obviously this is something different than our other PUDs. So I'm thinking it needs to be under 20.
Yes. Well, I mean, just for example, when I saw that, I'm thinking, well, we also, comparing it to a PUD, we took out the language regarding, compatibility with transportation and community facilities. And we also took out encouragement of open spaces compared to the PUD. I mean, some of the language we took out of the regular PUD R6 language, but then there's other things like those that we took out. And I think that that must be tied to the fact that we're talking about things as small as 2 acres.
Or predetermined areas like a big parking lot,
Yeah.
that you're limited on your green space.
Yeah, but the whole thing isn't limited on green space. It is, but I know what you're saying.
No, we didn't eliminate open space, we just pared it down. There's still some open space requirements, aren't there?
I believe it's 15%.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's not part of the purpose clause, that's all I was saying.
Well,
We were
okay.
eliminating. I mean, I'm just
Right.
feeling it
It's
my way
an
through it.
observation, it's an appropriate observation.
I'm not trying to say I'm against any of this, it's just, here's my random thoughts as I'm reading through it,
Good
trying
point.
to. The other thing, and I think that those two, those are my main points, but I also thought, and I sent Tom an email about this, that we might want to, if not today, in future, consider an amendment to whatever we approve today. There's all these programs for blighted areas. I looked up neighborhood stabilization program and, grants under the community development block grant program, all at HUD. And I'm just wondering if that's, seems to be part of what we're doing here is if we can get money by putting language in here that says, please interpret this R7 as qualifying under these programs or their successor programs in the future, that might also encourage people to be able to get a grant and then, it might be more effective and for the developers and give them some flexibility to maybe put in some more green space because they're not worried about having to spend as much money because they're getting a grant, I don't know.
Or they commit in their plan that they submit for trustee approval.
Yeah.
They commit in such a way that when the trustees approve it, their qualifying language
Yeah, this
is met.
This was just in the news within the last week or so. Ohio got a huge chunk of money and divvied it up, and Summit got a big chunk, and Stark got a big chunk, and gee, if we've got it mentioned here in part of our R7, maybe that's an effective use, or at least give somebody the idea to go, hey, this could help us, keep the township happy with, the green space they want to have, and open space they want to have, and we can still do it economically because maybe we get a grant. I'm just trying to facilitate, an idea maybe to facilitate, if not the current pending application, future ones. And
You want to add some?
I don't know how those programs work. I'm just suggesting that Tom, if somebody look into them and see if it would be helpful to add that language at some point. Because I don't know, those programs probably say, we're not going to just give money to anybody. It has to be something that qualifies under all these criteria, which I don't know what they are. But if there's some way we can say, look, if the HUD is interpreting whether or not we're in compliance with their criteria, please interpret, this whole thing is to be read as to comply. I don't know. I mean, it's just a thought. It's not something I think we're going to get resolved today. But if we're going to do this, I would strongly recommend that we look into that further and determine if it's even a viable idea or not.
I agree.
Those are my thoughts.
Are you interested in adding back in some sort of sensitivity to transportation and open space issues as part of the purposes?
I would, yeah.
We have some language in mind?
Well, just the language from, the PUD. I mean, under current section F on page 1, land uses, transportation and community facilities, period. I suppose you could put if, as applicable, we want to keep it, keep the flexibility there. I mean, obviously, a 2-acre thing is not going to create the kind of traffic that a 17-acre planned, PMUD would create. So, transportation would be a big, for example, the Oakwood Square project, that would be much more important there than it would be to some 2.1 acre redevelopment somewhere else. So, yeah, I think that should be in as a, the other language would maybe add a G, encouragement of open space for use of the residents and proposed project areas. As applicable. The other thing I thought, just in terms of language, just to the lawyer in me, in the first paragraph it says, third paragraph, residential and business/office uses may be mixed in the same building or structures with the business. I think that should be businesses, or maybe even in parentheses, located on the first floor of the residences with a parenthesis. I mean, you're almost, the way the language is, you're limiting it to one business, one residence above it. A strict reading of the purpose clause would keep there from being multiple businesses with multiple residences over there.
So we just eliminate the word "the" and make that residences, with residences being above businesses?
I don't think you even have to take the out, just where it says
Just, yes.
S is
in parentheses.
emphasis in S in parentheses here.
Yeah.
There, and there.
Okay.
And I thought the language of the next sentence was a little awkward. The use of larger tracts of land is encouraged but not required. And then add the words, so long as the PMUD promotes, and then the rest of the sentence.
Where are you with that?
I'll show you. I just kind of did this today, so I didn't share it with anybody. Right here, not required. You got the old version.
Well, that's, yeah, where's the new version?
There's a red line version that Tom sent out a couple of days ago.
Oh.
Well, that would help explain it.
Yeah.
Here's the problem. My changes are also red, but what I'm saying is, let's see. This after located. Above the businesses, here you say here, the same,
Says the
businesses located on the first floor and the residences being the businesses. Just like that's what I added in. And then underneath that is encouraged but not required. And then add the language, so long as the PMUD promotes. The rest of that sentence. And then at the end, in accordance with the plan, the approved, I put the plan if approved. I don't know what it says there. The approved plan, that assumes there's an approved plan. That's, again, that's just the lawyer in me. I thought we could clean up purpose language since it's so important.
That was in development in accordance with such plan,
Yeah.
such development plan.
Tom, what was the impetus for the redlining?
I had worked very quickly to try and get it all together.
Oh.
And at the, after I wanted to get it to you before the weekend. And so when I got back to it, I started trying to just look at the mistakes.
So it wasn't that you did talk to Eric Williams or?
No.
All right. Or law director?
No, I don't have anything back from Eric yet.
Okay.
Such plan. Not approved, not approved.
In accordance with such
Such
a
plan.
plan.
Steve and Ian, let me just ask this, to come up with a final version, how are we going to do that in between now and?
Could just read it into the record. And then,
Read it into
Well,
the next
Could
meeting.
we have whatever changes you hear at this meeting, could those then be redlined in so that by the time we sit here on August the 10th,
Finished version to read.
Well, I'm thinking our secretary has notes on his copy already. And if we concur that those notations are appropriate adjustments to the text that we're all working off of.
You guys, here's the red line version. I don't know how many of you printed off the red line version
You all
from.
have a copy of it?
Okay,
No, I'll take a look.
this is Tom's red line version. Mine, I tried to make my own changes on the first page, which I couldn't get it to come out any other color than red.
Okay.
It was a darker red, but when I printed it, it was the same color red.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to confuse anybody. Anything on there is Tom's proposal that he made before
Previous.
we started our working session. The changes I'm all talking about are, I think, relatively minor and on the first page. So any redlining you see on my copy, but everything is, I didn't
We'll
touch.
have another chance to take a look at this after it comes back from regional planning
Right.
and before it gets submitted to the trustees. And it sounds to me like the benefit of the swiftness of the timing would outweigh the benefit of waiting for us to further tweak minor language changes in the document.
Yeah, I thought that was what we were going to do today, is try and tweak it
Okay.
if we otherwise agreed with it.
Okay.
And that's what I was trying to look for here in the purpose clause.
Okay, so we all on board with the purpose clause, pluralizing businesses and residences rather than just leaving them singular in that middle sentence. Okay, do we agree that the businesses have to be located on the first floor and the residents above?
Yes.
Or can we agree that it's okay for them to be on different floors? For example.
Well, they're talking about the same building or structure.
Okay, let me give you an example.
Okay.
There is a building in downtown Canton that used to be an office and hotel or whatever. Now there's something called the Camp Club maybe, it used to be on top.
Oh, yeah, can't.
Okay, so now there's a business, there's a residence that's got the view of the cityscape, it's on the top of this building. I mean, I'm not saying we have that here, but how awful would that be to have a restaurant on an upper floor and residences below it? Are we stuck with the idea that it has to be only business uses at the floor level and residences above, or?
It's restricted to 3-story buildings.
Okay,
And yes, I think it is restricted to businesses on the first floor and residences above that, if the building itself is mixed use.
One of the things I was looking at is the residences. If we try and stick a residence in between several businesses, whether they're on top, on the sides, it could get difficult with the noise problems. And so if we restrict it, then I think it'd be a little bit easier.
But why restrict it? You can be restricted by virtue of discussion at the point where it's looking for passage.
that's my point. You're taking away the whole beauty of the flexibility of it by regimenting what goes where. In the right circumstance, you might have a beautiful foyer walk-in area on a first floor that ends up going off into businesses, but it's really actually the entryway to the residential area, and that's where the elevators are to the housing above and whatnot. And so the actual first floor use could conceivably be lobby for the resident, not a commercial use, but it's on the first floor. And if you say, gotta be confined to the second floor, I mean, we're splitting hairs, but the idea is, most cases, it will be the second floor where the residence goes, but do we want to?
So you're saying
Does
take
that add a lot to our purpose by actually designating which floor, which?
I take your point. I mean, just take that language out.
I think it would be better to keep it in. I think that it would be better still to have the businesses on the first floor.
Better, but why would you want to make it an absolute? There should be a case-by-case situation.
Yeah, this goes to my point before you, I'm not sure, before you got here, my question was, isn't this, we're trying to make it easier, we're trying to open things up for special circumstances, and isn't that what we're doing here? And therefore, we want to give flexibility to the developers, the trustees, and everybody else. So if that's our objective in creating this, then I think John's point's very, very valid.
Well, perfect example, and I'm not saying I approve the plan as submitted by the applicant at the last meeting, but my understanding is that the corner building in this L-shaped plaza is going to be residential.
Right.
And it's going to be a senior complex of some sort, and it'll involve housing, but literally, that's in the center, and the businesses are adjoining and spreading out, walkway accessible, whatnot, but that technically, if you're saying, Tom, that application from 2 weeks ago would comply with this, I think we've just seen that it probably doesn't. At least with that.
Well,
I disagree. I don't see that it,
if they're all one structure, yes. If they're different structures, no. I mean, but if you put a gift shop in the senior center, then I think you've got a problem.
if it's on the first floor.
If it's on the first floor, but there's also residential on the first floor, unless it takes up the whole first floor. No, I agree. I think maybe taking the language out gives you the flexibility that we're talking about.
In the same building
Yeah,
or structure.
yeah.
But then when you say with the business located on the first floor and the second, that means you've taken away the flexibility
Right.
of having businesses and residences on different floors.
I think you're right.
Yes.
Let me do this at this time, because we could have a very long discussion. I don't want these guys to wait around forever. Would everybody be okay to get what I would call the public speaks or public input now?
Sure.
If you have any.
Sure. Yeah.
Are you guys okay with that?
You're asking a lawyer if he wants to say anything. Come on. The answer
It's not really
is.
public out there.
Yeah.
Okay.
As long as this is comment about the proposed R7 and not argument about an application that's set for hearing 2 weeks from now, I'm okay with that.
Sure.
Absolutely. I'll have Harry Gilton myself sign in.
And I'm not gonna swear anybody. This is just a work session.
Okay. For the record, Sam Fruscio here, and I do have a few comments on, I realize this is not a final document, but on this R7, and listening to the conversations that you all just had, I mean, I think that the mandating businesses on the first floor and residences on the second floor probably does take away the flexibility. So I mean, I don't know that that's, although the language is saying maybe, so residential and business offices may be mixed in the same building. So probably clarification might not be a bad way to go, but I think that if you want flexibility, you probably should maybe look at some different language with respect to that. Because, I mean, various developers may want to have different setups with respect to the space that they have, whether it's 2 acres or 10 acres, or maybe a different way to approach that development to meet all the objectives of what everybody is looking to do in those areas. And so that would be one concern. The other concern is on J, section 709.2, J talks about drive-ins, drive-up, or food facilities are not permitted either as principal or accessory. There may be some conversation with respect to that, whether there's a bank, a drive-up, or there's a pharmacy drive-up, because that seems to be very popular now. So I'd be somewhat concerned about that being there for, and then not being able to attract a bank or pharmacy or Starbucks. Yeah.
Are you suggesting perhaps that J be altered to say are not permitted as a principal use, then under 709.4B, permitted accessory uses, keeping that as a possible accessory use?
Right,
Yeah, so move it to B under that section.
right.
The main purpose for having that was to keep automobile traffic from interfering with all the other traffic that might be coming in and out.
And the pedestrian traffic.
And pedestrian traffic. I have no problem with allowing it under accessory. We could take a look on an individual basis where it's going.
Right.
Where in the project it's going to be placed.
Or even call it
Or all of it.
conditionally, or even call it permitted under conditional
Conditional
permitted
approval.
uses.
So, okay, number 5.
And for a conditionally permitted use, what kind of application or hearing or determination would have to be made for it to be?
BZA.
Okay, I'm okay with putting it under a conditionally permitted use. To stay true to the sense of what a mixed use is, and what you're doing is you're creating this little sub-community that's supposed to be independent, it's supposed to be pedestrian friendly. The people that live there are going to be shopping there. Yes, there will be some outside customers coming in or whatever, but the idea is to create this little mini community, if you will, within our community that has all these uses available for these people that are going to live there. And they're not going to have to drive, they're not going to need to go to a drive-in to get there. Now, should a Walmart be in one of these? Probably not, okay? I mean, the idea is you don't necessarily want to build an apartment on top of a Walmart. Maybe you do. I just can't think of a circumstance where that would be appropriate now. I don't want to foreclose the possibility that I could change my mind someday about that, but I mean, really what we're thinking is building these little communities where the people don't have to have cars. They can walk to get something to eat, to get their prescription and whatnot.
Like right over there in Oakwood Split.
We still live in Ohio though, that's the only catch.
Pardon?
We still live in Ohio though, and so, the weather might preclude, the elderly lady from getting her prescription, and so maybe she has her son or her daughter swing by a pharmacy to pick up their prescriptions, but I get what you're saying though.
What do you think, Greg?
How about that?
But you had a thoughtful look on your face.
No, I'm just absorbing it all in. I do agree that we should put it under a conditional and permitted use. That one does make a lot of sense.
Should be a conditional permitted use.
As an accessory use, but not as a principal.
Wait, I can make sure I understand here. I've got it.
Drive-up or drive-through facilities are not permitted
Under
as a
conditional
principal.
permitted use?
I'm looking at J now.
I know, we're moving it.
I'm reading it, drive-in, drive-up, and drive-throughs are not permitted as principal uses.
But as an accessory.
No, we were thinking of taking it out and moving it to another subsection where under conditional permitted use.
Yeah.
Just moving it entirely from there,
Oh.
putting it here.
How about are permitted only as conditionally permitted accessory uses?
Something like that.
Drive-in, up, are permitted only as conditionally permitted accessory uses?
It would fit good under conditionally permitted. That way they can look in one spot to see what's conditionally permitted.
Even so, I wouldn't want it to be a principal use, I'd only want an accessory to one of the other permitted uses. I wouldn't want a primary use to be a drive-in,
Just to drive.
You don't want
a
to
drive-in.
Like the drive-in lock, drive-in locksmith.
Yeah.
I mean, but, okay, I mean, we can work on the language a bit.
Okay, I'm sorry, we've got public input going on here.
That's okay.
I digress, sorry.
You have any of those are some of the things I just.
Yeah.
Your section, I'm sorry, Grant Giltz.
That's all right.
In M.
30%.
Page me up.
Page 3.
Page 3. it states in here, a minimum of 30% of planned development's total building floor shall be devoted to residential uses, the density of which shall not exceed 10 dwelling units per acre of land, excluding land required for open space. So if the developer were to come into the development and it's a 10-acre development with mixed use of shopping centers, and maybe he wants to demolish part of that shopping center and redevelop the existing shopping center, but say there's 3 acres remaining, that'd only be 30 units total, and you're calling for 3 stories, it wouldn't be a, that's not typical. And when I say it's not typical, it's you could have a 3-story building that's contiguous, and you would be able to possibly get 30 units in an acre and a half.
See, now I'm reading that differently than you are.
Okay.
Just because you put commercial on 7 of the 10 acres, I'm seeing that the whole site is 10 acres. So you still have, after you put 30%, you have to at least devote 30% of the 10 acres to residential uses. It doesn't mean you can't mix the uses. So it's not an either or. Some of your acreage is going to be counted as both residential, maybe I'm...
The challenge will be...
For density purposes, you still have 10 acres. So at 10 dwelling units per acre, you can put 100 units on a 10 acre. Are you saying that's not sufficient?
The challenge would become if financing is different for apartments as it is for commercial, as it is for industrial, as for different things. And so if a development were to occur in stages, and maybe under the plan unit development that everyone had agreed upon, we allocated this area for apartments, this area for retail, and the apartments didn't get built right away, but maybe that's in the second phase of after the first development is developed. So I guess if you were to get financing and then needed to create another description within the plan unit development, I guess is what I'm saying, you could potentially box that developer into building 10 units for that section.
You mean we could make the developer commit to building it even though phase 1 fizzled and he still wants to...
It takes some...
Let me finish. If I understand the question, you're wanting us to give the developer a way out if phase 1 doesn't work and so he doesn't have to build phase 2?
Well, it could go both ways. Maybe the project is in stages. Maybe stage 1 is develop the retail, phase 2 is the residential. Somehow, I think a mechanism should be incorporated where you're not boxing in. I think if it simply said a blend of residential and commercial, I think that covers you, but once you start defining the amount of units, that's when things get problematic later on.
That's what zoning is.
Well, I get it.
We can't, I don't think we want to, I'm speaking for myself now.
Sure.
But if I can understand a complaint or a concern that that's too restrictive, but for someone to come up here and say that it would behoove us as a board to say there should be no limitation on density, sorry.
Well, we sort of define it.
Fly here.
I guess what I'm trying to say is you're already having a blend of 30% of shall be devoted to residential and or, what do you say, 30% of plan unit development, total floor shall be devoted to residential uses. So if you're quantifying it that way, I think that gives a developer more flexibility if you stop it there. But then you also add, of which shall not exceed 10 units per acre of land.
I think he indicated he thought that it was 10 for the whole project, so.
So if the project's 10 acres total,
Right.
and 3 acres of it are gonna be residential, you can still put 100 residential units on those 3 acres. Because it is a part of the bigger plan.
Okay.
That's what Steve was.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
Not to exceed 100, I mean, you can put 80.
Yeah, maybe we're just arguing over nothing.
We might be.
But let me
It'd be 85.
Let me ask this. You're, just for a, not that again, that this is going to be approved or not approved, but this proposal that you had a couple weeks ago, how many dwelling, or how many residences or units, residential units were going to be in that total?
At the time of the meeting 2 weeks ago, we told you 220. After listening to the neighbors and we don't want backlash, we reduced it to 120 units now.
Okay, so 120 units over
15 acres.
over 15 acres.
Right.
That's less than 10 per acre.
Doesn't hurt his plan.
This would not hurt your and I guess we want it to be realistic too. We don't want to create such an unreasonable expectation that we're thinking we're creating an option for a developer that isn't there. I mean, we need to hear from you about what the dynamics are and what a reasonable density number would be.
So let me ask you this question. If you wanted to sell off the apartments, how does the developer just sell off the apartments but keep the retail or vice versa?
When it's a unit, a planned unit, I don't know that would be, well, I mean, once it's done.
Well, somebody would also have to come in and say, we want to change the zoning. Otherwise, it doesn't, I don't know if it matters who owns it. If it's all zoned, the zoning doesn't change, who cares who owns it?
Well, no, one of the requirements of a PUD, and even a mixed-use PUD, is that there's a single owner of the entire complex, a single entity.
If it's in B.
Entirety. Oh, okay.
Okay.
So you wouldn't be selling it off.
All right.
If you're going to develop independently, this isn't your modality to do that.
Well, the point I was going to make when you originally brought this up is this is under a residential, we are defining this as a residential area, and there has to be some limitation of how, of how much of it is actually going to be residential. So I don't have a problem with that M, section M, and I think I agree with the other board members that maybe we're arguing over nothing here, but.
And I don't mind either making that a BZA, if they need a variance and they're 5 units over or something, or to make the plan work, they need a 20% deviation on the density, let them take that to BZA and argue it there.
You know, and I'm going to ask a question. Would be a change, this is work session, so would be a change that, I assume there's probably been several changes as a result of discussions with neighbors.
There has.
Okay.
And again, we want to be good neighbors. You never want to go into a development. You're not going to please everybody. You guys probably know that, but we don't want to be adversarial. We listened. We reduced it by 100 units from what we presented to you 2 weeks ago. I met with the
Homeowners
Homeowners Association. Met them actually today, and I told them I'll just be as open and transparent as I can, and whatever you guys want. I'm going to feed them the information that I get, and as we move forward. So,
Other than needing a variance of the 20-acre minimum, do you foresee that you would need other variances?
Under an R6 or?
Yeah, because right now the application
There's
is pending
several,
under R6.
there's
Several variances,
The-
yeah.
The main store is too large.
Okay, all right. So it's-
The open space is probably too small.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're still going to need several variances. Assuming that it goes forward as an R6, you're still going to need a couple variances.
several variances, yeah.
And those could all be dealt with in one BZA and hearing session. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just trying to give you input.
Yeah,
We
no,
just check in on
it's good.
As a developer. We've done PUDs. There's never, not one is ever the same, and not one project ever fits in the box. That's what we've always found. But I'll move on. The other thing is, just on the next page, on the retail services, that one just needs cleaned up. Retail sales establishment, 5,000 square feet or less, and right below it, retail establishments greater than 5,000 square feet. It talks about those drive-through facilities right below that. And again, if you have a Starbucks or a Panera, Subways or an Eggway, those are still types of pharmacies, things that are going to be out there. And then under the retail services and uses, I just sort of, my recommendation is to expand it a little further and just say other general mercantile retail uses that are within the neighborhood, I should say, or compatible with the neighborhood.
Can you give me an example of a business you have in mind that wouldn't fit into one of these categories that you think should be?
Well, that's just the whole thing. It's what we don't know that's out there. Could I sell video games? Could a GameStop go in here? You know, could a Best Buy go in here under this scenario?
Well, I mean,
And again, as long as it's not pinning what these things are, that's all. I'm just.
Well, it says supporting retail and services that reinforce the character of the district, such as, not necessarily, including, such as, but not excluding anything else. I mean, here's examples.
Where are you seeing that at, though? I'm sorry.
First line under, it says supporting retail. Under retail and services uses, fourth paragraph, supporting retail and services that reinforce the character of the district, comma, such as. So for example, and though it's, I don't think that current language limits it,
Okay.
other than it's got the drive-in, drop-in through facilities that are an ongoing issue.
Okay.
And
for
use,
guide-
you can use the lawyer's language, including but not limited to.
Yeah.
Right. Are you familiar with the North American Industry Classification System? There's a reference in here to that. I don't know whether, I frankly am not familiar with that, but apparently there's some classification that documents family or use families. In other words, just because it says retail sales establishment doesn't mean it can't be, game gear or something else. There's certain
Right.
kinds of retail. And that's a reference that our trustees or a developer, I guess, could use to
Fall back on
in any decision of what would be an appropriate use or not.
Okay.
It's a very large list of like businesses.
All right, good. And Joe, that's really it. That I just wanted to say, and I wanted to bring up, so.
So what would we want to do in terms of the wording for the without drive-in or approved facilities if we're going to do it on?
Cross that out.
Any more comments?
No.
Okay, thanks for showing up.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate your interest in our township.
Thank you.
Consideration,
Yeah.
appreciate
See you
it.
on the 10th.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Before, is everyone else okay with the 2 acre issue that I brought up?
I think it's kind of small. Like, I have 2.5 acres over at the corner of Front Ranch and Mount Pleasant. And it's Lake Township, obviously, but I'm looking at the size of the property, I'm like, well, could I build a plaza right there and put a frontage above it? And, it just seems very small.
Well, that was my concern, that's why I brought it up. And if the majority's happy with 2, then we stay there. I wouldn't mind increasing that at least a little bit.
Maybe 5, or 5 or more.
You're making your property less valuable.
Or what?
You're making your property.
No, he's on a different township, so it doesn't hurt you at all.
Well, what I'm suggesting is if you look at the purpose clause and we look at your 2 acres, and if you can't demonstrate that you need this to halt deterioration or related conditions or to encourage the development of the property because it can't otherwise be efficiently developed under normal standards, if you can demonstrate that to us on your 2 acre property, okay, well, I think it's worthy of looking at, but can you? I mean, do you have those conditions on your 2 acre property? This isn't going to be for every 2 acre property. This is going to be only for those special blighted or special needs areas.
You know,
So that's why we're creating this.
I think this, if I may take the other side, we're looking at maybe some storefront on Market Avenue, just inside Plain Township, that's been let, go, and somebody wants to come in and, fancy it up a little bit, and, do we want to limit them to only things over 2 acres? 2 acres or more?
2 acres cropped up kind of as an industrial standard
Yeah.
and stuff like this because you have the UNESCO hotels, you have the sites where it's a larger building that generally you don't get those on less than 2 acre sites. So I like 2 acres. I think again I think to an earlier point, if you build in more flexibility than less, I think it's a good idea because you have other control mechanisms, like Steve referred to, without having somebody have to come in and ask for where we can avoid asking for variances. I think it's a good thing, so long as we do not dilute the purposes of the classification, which are well spelled out, and as Steve alluded to, it's like you've got to cross the threshold barrier.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we could say 1 acre. I mean, it's
You really
seems
do
to
have
me-
no size limitation.
Yeah, they're really-
Honestly, and
right,
that's,
I mean-
that's probably what I would advocate for, because if it's blighted and it fits, I, as a community member, want it addressed.
Greg, what do you think?
Actually, I don't mind that. I don't mind not having anything in there specifically. Because.
I'm okay with that too.
Yeah, like in case.
Again, it's not about the size, it's about the need for the site.
Right, I agree.
I should have shut my mouth about that and kept it 2 acres. Hello?
Oh, no, I think they have a meeting going on. They must, let me check.
You guys have a meeting?
We do, 7 o'clock. Are you about finished?
No, we got a little ways to go yet.
We should just borrow a table and put it out in the hall. Can we borrow a table?
Yes, you can.
Can we borrow a table and meet out here?
Yes, you
Is that
can.
all right? They said we can.
All right.
Somebody jump.
How many chairs are you gonna need?
As I understand it, 3 changes to the first paragraph. Addition to item F on the increase of land use, transportation, community facilities.
We shouldn't be too much longer.
The only other thing we really need to deal with is this drive-in up through, which is referred to at least 3 different places that we've found so far.
So if we were to take
Save us out of it.
through facilities.
Somebody double.
I'm going to leave this to the more experienced board members, but I think there's a way of taking it and putting it somewhere else, and then we can just cross it out of everything, all the other places it shows up.
Right.
Okay.
What are we talking about?
The drive-in,
Drive-ins. We may
drive-ups,
have
drive-throughs.
visually permitted use, we really don't need to reference it.
So I mean, as I understand that, we take it out of, on page 2, we remove J, and basically go to page 5, under C, conditional permitted uses, add a new item 5 that says,
Drive-in, out or through facilities as conditionally
Conditional
permitted
approved.
accessory uses.
as conditionally permitted accessory uses.
And then you got a number of,
That goes to number 5 on page 5, bottom of page 5.
but if you drop back to page 4, you'll see several references there.
So you just cross those out?
So we just cross those out now, right? Very where it says without drive-in or drive-up through facility, same thing on the next line there. And then wherever it appears, and I guess overall, if it appears anywhere else,
We'll just cross it out.
we can just omit it.
Now, on page 2J, do we cross that out completely?
Yeah, we just renumber everything from there.
Well, maybe we don't. Let's, hear what's
Let me think about this. If you cross out without drive up, then are you saying that restaurants with drive-ups are permitted?
No, because he's saying that it's only conditionally approved.
As an accessory use, not as a principal.
Right.
And that's why I guess I wanted the language in there that they're not permitted as a principal use.
Just leave that in. I mean, it's a little bit duplicative, but it doesn't hurt.
So leave it in?
Leave it in all the spots?
Yeah, just in J.
Not
Not permitted as a
principal.
principal.
All right, so what, we're still taking J out, or we're leaving J in?
Oh, we're changing J.
All right, we're changing J to say.
I like what we did with moving it to say drive-in up through facilities as conditionally permitted accessory uses at the conditional use section. But here, I'd like it to still say drive-in up or through facilities are not permitted as a principal use.
And then take off or accessory uses.
Either.
There?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're changing J by taking off or accessory uses.
Yeah.
And we're gonna add in a section where we talked about on page 5, at the bottom of the page, new item number 5, that says drive-in up or through facilities as conditionally permitted as accessory uses. So we've divided it into two pieces. Okay.
Under J, we've also crossed out either. Either as a.
Right, either.
Are not permitted either.
Not permitted as principal.
Yes.
Use.
Where's that at?
J.
Two.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Fine with me.
As principal uses.
Okay, is there anything else? Because I'm just trying to keep all the changes, I'm just going to read them into the record.
I want to go back to page 1.
That's why I want to start on page 1.
I think I don't know if you need a word, this is a work session, I don't need a word.
Well, I'm just telling everybody what I think we've all agreed to.
Okay.
And at some point in time, I think we're going to have a motion to submit this as a proposed amendment, maybe today, and so it can go to BZA or to RPC for us to think about it or consider further at the next.
Yeah,
If possible, you get a dark casino tomorrow morning.
yeah. Well, okay, so what I'm saying on page 1, if everybody follows along, you got this one?
Page
1. Fifth line down, where beginning with the word structure, add a period and then take out the rest of that sentence.
Correct.
Structure.
Right, take out the words with the business located on the first floor and the residence being above the business. Take that language.
Can I make mention of one thing before we do that? The draw to an area is the businesses. The way you set them up, the attractive fronts, the restaurants, that brings people to that area. If you have residences in between, then you're breaking up that look,
Yes.
the attractiveness.
And do you think the developer would know that? Do you think he'd submit something that isn't going to be commercially, or would the people want to live there? My only concern again is, back to that is, perfect example. We got a lobby area to a residential use in the middle of the plaza, where the people, the seniors are going to come in there and they're going to take their elevators up to their units or whatever else. That's not a commercial use. It's on the first floor though. And we've said, if you leave that in there, it says you have to have the business uses on the first
The
floor.
residents.
No.
You can have access to it.
Well, no, I don't know. Is that a residential access or is that a business access?
Okay, drowning out Greg again.
Sorry.
That's not. Like, I see it, if you need to use it for residential access on the first floor, we're not saying no to that, we're just saying you can't use commercial on the second floor. I want to try to keep this in there. Like, I'm thinking of like New York City or something like that. New York City, you got the shops on the first floor, you don't have anything on the third floor, except for the apartments. I would rather keep all the living spaces separate from the shops.
Well, then, with businesses only located on the first floor, period.
Could in the senior complex, could Betty Boop open a beauty shop on the third floor for all the old ladies to come and see? Or she has to go down, they have to all go drag outside and walk to the first floor beauty shop down the street?
Yes.
Or on the first floor of the.
Or the first floor, or underneath where they
of
live.
the senior
Take
center.
the elevator down.
That's where the cafeteria is gonna be.
Okay.
No,
I'm
that-
okay with eliminating it. If you guys want to do something else.
I'm okay with eliminating it simply because it's supposed to be wildly flexible, and then we restrict it later on. And
Yeah,
trust the
it's-
trustees
it's
saying,
in the
look, it's
plan.
gotta be a very specific plan, and everybody has to approve it at all these different levels. It's only gonna kick in on a certain limited scenario, and that's, so I'd rather not restrict it in the purpose clause in that way. That's why I changed my original thoughts on that.
I thought we had everyone sway.
Yeah,
No, you won't sway me on this one. So I mean, we can vote on it, and that's okay, I'll be on record.
Okay.
Vote no on it.
okay, well, with that in mind, then what I was saying is, as the majority seems to be, we just put a period after structure, and take the rest of that sentence out, beginning with and ending with business.
With business.
Okay. The other thing I proposed on the next line down, where it says required, but not required, add encouraged but not required, and then take out the word to, and put in so long as the PMUD plan promotes, add an S to promote, the public welfare, et cetera, et cetera.
Promotes.
Sounds good.
Public welfare.
And at the very end, instead of saying the approved plan, we put take out
With
the
such.
approved and put in the word such. Because we're not assuming the plan's gonna be approved. That would be as I understand the changes at least the majority has gone through. We can go back to some of these if someone hasn't. And then, going down to the next paragraph.
Let's discuss that.
Okay,
I'm okay with that. Is anybody not okay with that?
paragraph 1.
No, I mean, that change you said about so long as it promotes. I'm thinking we're developing language as we go. Do we want to do it line by line so we don't have to go back?
No, I like it. Anyone else not like it?
I'm also with that.
Okay.
It
Anyone?
doesn't hurt. I think it basically says the same thing, but it doesn't hurt.
I think it's better language.
It's tighter, okay, it's tighter.
And anyone disagree with taking out at the very end there, the approved plan and substituting such plan?
Sounds good.
That's a problem with that.
The other thing I wanted to add in is in the next, or we talked about, and I didn't hear any objection to, was the next paragraph, subsection F, at the end of that section, to add in language like we have in the PUD, R6, comma, transportation and community facilities, and then to leave the flexibility as applicable.
Why are we putting transportation facilities in?
Transportation and community facilities, which is the language, I just pulled the language out of the PUD, R6. I wondered why that was not at least to be a consideration.
Let's see, what page are in the resolution book are we?
56, I think.
56.
Oh, it's R67081F.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Very good.
Section 708.1F.
Page 56, according to my copy.
I'm sorry, point what?
Point 1F.
Okay.
Under the purpose clause for R6. I just took some of the language that apparently had been pulled out and put it back in.
Well, the point is, we want there to be
708,
we want there to be some sensitivity in
Yeah.
those criteria.
Yeah.
I think it's 706.
708.1F.
What's the surrounding line?
Well, I didn't use, is there any land uses, transportation and community facilities, and and we could stop there. We can just sort of throw in as applicable, which gives, again, the flexibility idea, because, maybe on a 2 acre it doesn't matter about transportation and community facilities as much as it does on a 17 or 15 acre.
No, I like the same F as in the R6 as in, should be in this one too.
All right,
the
so
R7.
just end at facilities. Okay,
And facilities or community facilities?
just like it is on, it ends on
Community facilities.
transportation and community facilities, period. Okay, everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Yep.
Compatibility is all we're after.
Right.
Okay, good. I have a, we passed E. I have a E, yeah.
All right.
I just have a suggested language change. I think we're all saying the same thing, but to me, it's a little bit strained how that reads.
Yeah,
Okay, here's what I'd like it to say. Leave the first line as is, encourage and coordinate development projects that might otherwise be developed. And here's where I want to change. Individually, in a manner that may be detrimental surrounding neighborhoods and the developer. Get rid of the word which and put the words in a manner that.
and
In a manner that may be determined.
We don't want them developed individually in a manner that would be detrimental to the surrounding neighborhoods and the developer. We want them developed in a coordinated manner.
okay. Do you want to say neighborhood, that raises a point. We want to say neighborhoods and, we want to say or and slash or. Or does it matter?
Well-
You just want to leave it the way it is?
Well, actually, I'm not worried about the developer, I'm
I'm not
more
either.
worried about the township, neighborhoods, and the community.
Yeah, well, neighborhoods and the community, I like that.
Can we get rid of developer and put
Yeah.
community in?
Sure. Excellent idea.
Wait, so,
So here's how I propose it would read now. The first line stays the same, encourage and coordinate development projects that may otherwise be developed individually in a manner that may be a detriment to the surrounding neighborhoods and the community.
Yep. Any objections? Okay, we're done with page one?
I'm just wondering, with that last change, what's really the difference between which may be a detriment? And, you know, I'm just trying to figure out how somebody's going to.
Okay, well, here's what, the which doesn't say what it's referring to, whether the which is the coordinated development or the individual development.
Yeah, I think it's just,
It's just confusing what you're referencing by the word which.
he's trying to tighten up the language,
I-
write better English, I think.
I agree, I struggled with that. But I hadn't passed it.
No, you did fine for a rough
I
draft.
think that's good.
You just need to say something like, this kind of shit ain't permitted around here.
Yeah, we don't want no shit around here.
Yeah.
That camera on?
What
This is
what
a
did
work
what did
session.
it court?
This is a work session, folks. This is how we work in the Shire.
It's after 7.
Joey, go to bed.
All right,
Excuse my
so we're back, are we okay down through J on page 2? And we've got the J language, drive up stuff.
Drive, and I have it as drive in, comma, up, comma, or through facilities as conditionally permitted use.
I have it as, are not permitted as
Yeah.
principal use.
Are not permitted as
Are not-
per this.
are- Sorry, are not permitted as
As
principal use.
Principal use, yeah.
That's what we were talking about.
That's the
I'm
thing.
sorry, I got too many scribbles here.
Not permitted as principal uses, right?
Principal use is, okay.
I think K is okay. Okay, now, here's what I have a question about L, awning standards. Are we requiring awnings, or are we saying, if there are awnings, this is what they have to be conforming to?
That was the gist of it.
Okay, The reason why I ask is because some of the different legislations I looked at talked about in inclement type climates,
You shall have.
that you shall have the awnings so that there can be free and protected set pedestrian flow, like between the residential parts and the stores. So the old folks that they come out to walk over to the store aren't having to walk in snow all the time. You have it as a design requirement that you have roofing or awnings or just some sort of sheltered walkway that they can walk through. And also you put them in areas where if you've got a parking lot and you want to make a pedestrian pattern to go from the housing to the retail part, you actually have to build such an area of an improved pedestrian walkway, so you're not only having these two uses, but you're facilitating the action of traffic between the residential and the commercial areas.
I read this as permissive, if you're going to do awnings.
And that's what it was intended.
Okay, all right, so we're not going to require any kind of protection at this point,
That's reducing flexibility.
okay?
Do we want to say any awnings, or leave it the way it is?
Awnings as applicable.
Or awnings if used.
What do you want to say?
I like that, awnings if used.
Okay.
That way, it's clear that it's a if, not a mandate.
Okay.
Well, wouldn't shall meet the following standards? Wouldn't that basically mean if you have them? That's how I would read it.
Oh, that's how I read it too.
Okay, maybe it's overkill.
Okay. Take it out, leave it as is.
Yeah, I'm good with that too.
So we're down to M, a minimum of 30% land development total floor space.
I like that, this is how it is.
Okay, now, just I'm curious. They talk about a building's total square foot area. So if it's a two-story building, the square footage is actually bigger than the acreage. Because acreage is the size of the parcel, but square footage is.
The amount of usable space.
So do we want to say that? Do we want to say 30% per acre, or 10 dwellings per acre, or do we want to say per acre of land, or do we want to say per acre of floor space?
I'd just leave it as is, but
I'm fine with it as.
I get it.
The term is meant to control the number of living units in a given space.
In the whole parcel,
Yeah.
in the whole land
Yeah.
parcel,
So
regardless of how many square foot of development there is on it. Floor space. Okay? Just to be clear.
That was the intention.
Yeah, okay. I understand it.
I don't know that we want to see somebody come in and have a drug mart and then fill the rest of the area with apartments.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Where does the 10 units per acre fit in terms of our other districts?
It fits kind of in between the maximum in multi-family use and like the PUD with 6 units per acre.
Okay, so it's a little more than a PUD, but less than a,
Then maximum use, yes.
okay. So it's a balance to deal with the fact that there's this commercial use mixed with it.
There's commercial as well, it's not just a big apartment
Tom, did
complex.
you see that as consistent with some of the other ordinances?
Yes,
that are
and
resolutions?
that's where I based it on.
I think you're
Looking at
wording
all
that,
the
that
figures.
sounds reasonable. Okay, I had a question about N, number 1. Such display shall be located in areas intended for traffic circulation. In my reading of these things, they talk about pedestrian traffic and they talk about vehicular traffic. And I'm thinking you meant that to be vehicular traffic.
I did.
Okay. So are they allowed to put outdoor displays on the sidewalks, which would be where the pedestrian traffic is? Can they have a sidewalk
Are they
sale?
located? That would depend on the size of the sidewalk.
Yeah.
I mean, is a restaurant gonna be allowed to expand out front a little bit and have seating? And that would be if the sidewalk is large enough to contain it.
Well, and I just suggested, I just scribbled down that if it's a pedestrian traffic area, it should not significantly disrupt the pedestrian
The flow.
traffic flow.
Is that some elsewhere?
No, it's not elsewhere, I was thinking of adding it there.
No, we had.
That outdoor display shall be located not be located in areas for vehicular traffic, but may be located in areas for pedestrian traffic where it does not significantly obstruct the traffic flow. Does that make sense?
That's fine with me.
So we want the display areas, so we want them for the pedestrian traffic, but we don't want them for the automotive traffic.
I'm thinking of this little storefront that wants to hang a display of their handcrafted sweaters out for people that walk by to see them. Kind of like when you go to these
Sure.
resorty shopping areas where you see little storefronts, I mean, they might put their stuff out front to get people to come and look at it.
Yeah.
And I don't have a problem with that, so long as it's not obstructing the pedestrian traffic. I don't want them to put it out in the parking lot though. And this says it can't be in any traffic circulation. I'm differentiating between pedestrian traffic and vehicular traffic.
Okay, so but may be permitted in areas intended for pedestrian traffic. What's the limitation there?
So long as they do not significantly obstruct the traffic flow.
Pedestrian traffic flow
Yeah.
or the automotive traffic flow?
No.
You might want to make those two separate things.
You think that's too loosey? For the,
I think we should keep it how it is right now.
Shall not be located in areas intended for vehicular traffic. Shall A, not be located in areas intended for, but B, may be permitted in areas intended for.
do we have to regulate the sidewalks, or are you saying just leave the sidewalks out of it?
If we just, areas intended for pedestrian traffic circulation without, shall not be located in areas intended for pedestrian circulation without, no.
So are we thinking like if there was a Great Clips in the middle of this plaza, the Great Clips wanted their sign that says walk in, welcome, or
Right.
anything like that? Is this kind of signage that we're talking about, or the
Well,
display?
It could be that, it could be a bookseller shelf.
Sure,
A
like
display
over at
of
Books
books.
A Million or something, you go there, you're gonna see stacks of books before you walk into the store.
And I would hate to stop that because that creates foot traffic
Right.
for the shops.
Right.
Substantially, how about this, so long as it does not substantially,
Impede or
Repeat.
pedestrian traffic.
Yep.
impede pedestrian traffic. All right, pedestrian traffic, okay, got it. I wrote it into two sections.
So how's that rated now?
I'll read it to you. And I put an A and a B there so we know what language goes with what section. Such display areas shall, A, not be located in areas intended for vehicular traffic circulation. Semicolon, but, and, semicolon, and may be,
And B,
and B, may be permitted in areas intended for pedestrian traffic circulation, so long as it does not substantially impede pedestrian traffic.
Can I throw out,
go ahead, Fred.
what happens if they want to have a tent sale? And they're going to have several of the shops are going to come together, or they're going to have a carnival.
Well, I think carnivals are
You're going to
illegal,
have
right?
that, there are something like that. But are you interfering with that by saying you can't put it in the parking lot?
no,
Okay.
you're allowed a temporary display
Right.
where no more than 10% of the existing parking spaces are used. You provided for that already in number 2.
Yeah.
Temporary stuff. You just can't set up your tent and leave it up forever.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Anything else on page 3?
Yeah, just-
Maybe just a correction on
Sure.
this 9.3 thing. frontage, the category frontage is denoted as S7, which I assume is square footage.
Should be lineal
It
foot.
should be just feet, FT, right?
Yeah, FT. You're right. Where, no, John's absolutely correct.
Where it says lot area?
No, where it says frontage, it's the next, it's after lot area.
No, I took that out.
You took that out.
I don't have one on.
Look at the.
Yeah, look at the red line.
Yeah, okay.
I took it out because I didn't see a need to try and give a frontage for,
A unit might not have roads,
yeah.
or public roads.
Okay, so frontage is gone.
Look at the wrong version.
The old version.
And then
But it
below,
was still wrong.
Yes, it was.
They
But
tried
it's
to
now
force
wrong,
it.
it's gone.
It's just gone now.
Yeah, it was
to be corrected.
been corrected.
Small.
No, there's a spacing problem.
Yards adjoining resident districts. You okay with that?
There's just some typos, clerical things. There's a space at the end of the line, and the order on the next line down should be lowercase. There's a space here we don't need in that or.
That's a new office residential.
Yeah.
Office residential, that's a new one, we haven't.
Just like my name better for this district. That mixed use district. I had the commercial retail unit development, also known as a CRUD. They are not preferred classifications. Okay. We talked a lot about this when the public speech portion was going on about this principal uses and mixed uses. And didn't we all agree that we need to add as a conditionally permitted use the language about the drive-through number
We
5?
skipped over page 4, there's a change on 4.
Oh, okay, go ahead, sorry.
We talked about where it says supporting retail services that reinforce the character of the district. We are going to, well, first of all, the line above that, we're taking out without drive-in, up or through facilities.
And we're doing it above the office professional services as well, up by number 136. You can see,
Yes, everywhere it says that.
There's 3 of them on that
There's
one.
3 of them on that page. But we're also adding on the supporting retail services that reinforce the character of the district. We're taking out the words such as and putting in the lawyer language, including but not limited to.
Yeah.
And then at the end of that, taking out
Does that mitigate what we're saying there, or are you just saying it for more flexibility?
both.
Okay, because when we talk about this North American Industry Classification System up above, we allow reference to those uses to include what might be similar families of uses. So I hear what you're saying. It's the same thing.
It's the same thing. It was confusing to him, so let's try and fix it a little bit.
I can live with that.
Okay, now we're on page 5, if everyone else is agreeable. Okay, let me see if I got the language, I gotta go back to. So so starting on about line, page 5, about line.
C5, 175 or so.
Yeah, it's gonna say, drive in, up, or through facilities as
As
conditional,
conditionally permitted.
permitted.
No, I'm sorry, we don't have to put conditionally, we just have to put as
Accessory.
accessory uses, because it's under the permitted, under the conditionally section.
Okay,
As accessory use.
okay. Sorry.
Just out of curiosity, to go back to that page here.
Which page?
I mean, business and trade, school, garden supply sales, veterinary hospital, kennel and car wash facilities. Any feelings one way or the other from folks here?
well, they were already letting businesses up on the 3rd floor. We might as well get all those things in.
If some developer can find a way to make that work and part of a team and think it's gonna be financially viable if they do that. And there must be a desperate situation. We're trying to create some flexibility, why not?
I'm gonna put a card shop right in the middle of 2 apartments, and I'm gonna have a big line outside their doors.
In cars,
What?
in vehicles as a drive-up.
Oh, no, I'm still back to that, at the beginning.
Okay, I can go either way, I just didn't want to pass by without,
Well, I mean,
people thinking about it, that's all.
personal services, planned business complex, whatever that is. Business and trade school. I suppose on a big enough development.
I just checked those, I just checked business and trade school, garden supply sales, veterinary hospital, kennel and car wash facilities, I mean, I don't care.
When I think of the business and trade school, I think more like maybe one of those driving schools, something like that. Obviously, something that could be a storefront, that could be small, but would still be.
Well, you can maybe call that Brown Business School or
Brown Mackey.
Mackey.
Yeah,
That's what I'm thinking when I see that.
yeah. I mean, I'm
We need another
okay.
paralegal school around here, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with it.
Okay.
Okay, anything else on page 5?
No.
Well, that's where my notes are, so I'm good.
When, I have a question on page 6, when at paragraph B2, we talk about 1 acre of land, a half acre for 1 acre of land. Are we saying that it has to be at least an acre, or are we saying 50% when we say a half acre for every 1 acre?
Yes.
Yes.
So it has to be at least an acre? Or are we saying 50%?
We're saying 50%. You win.
It's not really, I just want to be
I
clear.
know.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
All right, so
Because we're talking percentages and everything else. Up about paragraph 1, we say 15%.
shall be credited as,
Bodies of water,
I think this is the way it currently says it in our R6.
Okay, well, let's be consistent. I didn't go back and look. If you say that's what it says. okay.
I'm looking right now.
The idea being it's going to be prorated.
it is.
So if they need a half acre of open space, a body of water would count as a quarter of an acre. The half acre and 1 acre is just for illustrative purposes.
Yes.
Okay.
No, it's just permitted uses.
where's the general provisions? The open space part of it.
There is no.
No, it was, I think it was early. Let's see.
Open space, there it is.
What page is it?
It's section 708.2C. Well, that's part of it. No, that doesn't
That's
address
not
it.
that language. I don't know where you got that language from.
To try and, other jurisdictions have that, to try and extend the green space.
Yeah, bodies of water, stormwater retention or detention basins shall be credited as 1/2 acre of common for each 1 acre of land credited as,
Okay, so they're at 50% unless it's designed to, and improved for appropriate open space or recreational use. Well, what would be an appropriate open space use beside a recreational use? It's got a fountain in it, you put goldfish in it, would that be,
No,
would that make it a open space or park area as opposed to a drainage ditch?
No, what they'll oftentimes have is a detention area that's dry. And it's only filled up when there's enough sufficient water coming down the street. It's used to slow down the flow.
But wouldn't that still be open space?
they're not gonna, they're saying it's open, well, part of it's gonna be water. I don't know.
I mean, it's visually open,
Sometimes-
isn't that the idea of open space?
Sometimes on Edgewood, it maintains a level all the time of water.
Yeah, there's a level there.
And so,
Yeah. Okay, so how's it supposed to read? Bodies of water, stormwater retention, shall be credited. What big is that?
Shall receive 50%
Six,
credit.
9, 194.
Shall receive
50% credit.
50%
Well,
credit.
Or if we just take the word prorate, add the word, that'd be prorate credited as 1 acre for every
Yeah.
1 acre. And the idea is when you say prorate,
Yeah,
just,
prorate
that takes it
credited.
away
Yep.
from just, it has to be acreage, it could
That's
be,
simple too.
yeah,
okay.
Good change.
okay. Then I can, the rest of it's fine, right? Is that paragraph?
Yeah.
What changes that?
We just added the word prorated at line 194 in front of the word credited.
is that to, are we alleviating credited,
Yeah, we're leaving credited in there, we're just adding the word prorated
prorated?
in front of credited.
Okay.
Prorated credit.
Prorata
credit.
Prorata, sorry.
So for each 1 acre of land so used,
Okay.
No, it's land required. It's an acre of land, of required open space, and get credited with a half acre.
If it's wet.
If it's a body water retention basin, unless they can prove that it's been improved for recreational or other appropriate open space use to make it open space rather than just drainage.
Get a full percent.
if you could use a jet ski there.
Well, I think if you put goldfish in it, and you put a bubbler in it, it's now a fishing pond, not a drainage ditch.
Look at Price Park. I mean, when I'm looking at that, I'm thinking of the big pond in the front of Price Park. You know, you put a little gazebo out there, you know, and now it's a place where someone can actually be, like where they can actually enjoy the outdoors a little bit, enjoy nature a little bit. So I like it.
At nighttime, you could use a jet ski.
Yeah. Scare the fish, scare the ducks.
2 acres or larger. Okay. I frankly did not study those landscaping and screening regulations, and I'm thinking that you brought these over from a similar district.
Yes.
That they are the R6?
Not all of them, no.
Okay, where did, summarize for me, if you will, what you intended to change? Or what we left out here? Did we make it easier for the developer to landscape? Or did we toughen up the
We
screen?
made it a little bit easier because we didn't know what kind of conditions would be, the developer would be presented with. And so to try and mandate some of the larger green areas and that and such would be difficult to do.
So the 5% parking lot screenings or plantings, landscaping of islands, that is that number picked from somewhere, that 5%?
That's picked from general use. Several of the other communities want 10%.
Okay.
They want 15% of trees and plantings in parking lots. They don't want to see a lot of pavement. And so it was really just a ballpark figure there.
Do we have 5% somewhere else in our resolution? Where do we have it elsewhere? And do we have any kind of percentages in our other resolutions?
We don't have much.
Okay. So we're not asking them to do anything significantly more than they do in an ordinary parking lot in our...
No, just put some trees and islands that would break up the asphalt.
Okay, I see.
We have 2 little islands in the back parking lot at my phone. Very hassle, but at least in the summertime they look good.
I'm trying to think, do they have any over at Washington Square?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit.
It just breaks it up a little.
Yeah.
5% is plenty.
Okay.
I had a question. Once you get past sections 7 and 9 on the page 12 of the red line version, it starts talking about conditionally permitted uses, bed and breakfast, and accessory solar energy systems. What is that supposed to be part of what section?
The accessory,
Yeah. I mean, it goes, we have nice section numbers and A, B, C, Ds, and all of a sudden we get past section 709.9, and we go into these conditionally permitted uses for R7. I mean, it's almost, is that a new section? Should that be part of one of the earlier sections, like
We already have,
permitted uses?
oh, no, this, in the book currently, at the end of each section, you will find conditionally permitted uses. On page 12, you'll see bed and breakfast inn.
Right.
And
It's on page 5, right, breakfast in.
yeah, we've already got it here.
It's right here.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we need to do something about that.
So what are subsections 102, 105? I mean, that's these ones right here.
No,
Yeah.
No,
they're elsewhere in the resolution.
Yeah, if you look at that page that I'm talking about, it says 102, 105.
Are you on page 12?
I'm on page 12. If you look right at the top, it says 102 loudspeakers and 105 no lighting. And that's what I think he's talking about when he's talking about subsections 102, 105, 109. They all match up there.
Oh, yeah, you don't have to put all the language right, you just say subject to 102, 105, 109, 118, you just list the number, you don't have to put all the,
We
you don't have to.
don't need the last pages then. Page 12.
These are already in the conditionally permitted
12 through
uses.
14. The only reason I added those is because if you go to here, you're gonna find it at the back where it says conditionally. And so it was just, I thought, well, it's here, you guys might wanna see it there.
It's okay, so
Yeah.
So it's for convenience to the R7 developer too?
Yep.
Okay. Of course, if we ever change
That's
102,
the problem, is.
105, 109, then you have to change
Go
it
back,
again.
change that too, yeah.
Do we want to,
But
do we want to
we're
put
gonna have to
ourselves,
do
that's
that.
a drafting nightmare if you do that.
It's a drafting nightmare.
So don't we want to just put subject to and then put the numbers, the section numbers like
Very
we
well
do?
could.
well, why don't we just say, see attached exhibit A as set forth of subsections of exhibit A, make it part of.
Well, I don't mind regional planning getting this so they know what our 102, 105,
Yeah,
and 109.
absolutely.
But for the language, that should be like an exhibit, but for the language of the resolution amendment, aren't we sufficient in just putting?
These are already existing resolutions, right, existing conditional uses, right? So that's really not part of the resolution, it's for informational purposes. Okay,
So,
that makes a lot of sense.
now, does that go to RPC or not?
I think you should give it to them and say, here's, just so you know what we're talking about. For informational purposes, here's what our what we're saying.
they going to assume that's gonna be part and parcel of that R7?
Well, it will be, whether it's by incorporation or by specific inclusion, either way.
Okay.
We just don't want the nightmare having to, if we change that,
Has to change it.
I think when I say, look, here's the proposal, by the way, this is what we're talking about when we say conditional use 102 and 105 and 109, for bed and breakfast, blah, blah, blah. As referenced on page 5, or whatever page it is.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Did you get all that?
You can look at the video.
No, I want to make a copy of that too.
do we have any
Read
other,
my handwriting, I'll help you.
Yeah, I'll give you a holler, what I'll do is go through it in the morning.
Let's copy it, I'll take it with you.
right now.
Tom, can you think of, since we added drive-throughs as a conditionally permitted use, and these other conditionally permitted uses make reference to subject to or restrictions to other sections, can you think of any subsections of our resolution that we could be likewise restricting drive-throughs?
So something like this for the drive-through thing we just created.
Yeah. No, we don't have anything. That was more my trying to keep the idling cars and the big lines from forming through parking lots. And that was obtained through other resolutions. And I thought it was a good
You
idea.
have the conditions
I'm thinking,
identified that are,
yeah, otherwise BZA doesn't know what conditions to impose. Or they may not have any authority to impose any conditions, if we don't
it's a
say.
flaw.
So let's look at our conditions, see if any of them apply to, what other, do we,
I thought there were some that were specific to, right?
Okay, well, let's.
I don't remember seeing any.
Yeah.
We're not jumping out of things.
I think there were some at the McDonald's on Easton.
The Jurgensen building?
On Market?
Yeah, I thought there was some.
I like all of these. For example, if you're locating a drive-through, why not make it at a site location that is preferred, that offers a natural or man-made barrier that would lessen the effect or intrusion of this into a residential area? 108.
Okay, hold on, subject to,
I mean, we can go down all these and just say
do it.
yes or no, whether these restrictions should apply to the
I got 108.
108's for sure.
How about a buffer yard?
Do we want lighting that will not constitute a nuisance to the adjacent properties?
Well,
So
start
that's a
at the beginning.
105.
Washington Square, don't they have that buffer yard with their
Well,
Starbucks?
loudspeakers.
You have a buffer between residential and
This is.
Oh,
this
this
is-
is-
How about loudspeakers? They're gonna have a, you don't want it to be the little,
No, we don't want to drive through if
It's too loud.
Yeah. What do you want on your hamburger? You know, right next
Well,
to your.
what is the,
103.
what is the zoning classification for where McDonald's on Market is? That's
that's a B2, I believe.
B2, so why don't we just pull in from the B2 classification the sections applicable to the drive.
Well, because for one thing, that's not that close to a residential area.
It is.
Yeah, it's right across the street.
And for one other thing, that one wasn't restricted enough.
Not near.
I guess that depends on being represented.
Yeah, well, okay. I think my perception is that wasn't restricted enough.
I think it pulled in almost
I haven't
everything.
seen anything.
I'm not seeing anything there either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's, what are we gonna have? We've got
102.
102.
Do we want to keep them from having loudspeakers that are hazardous or annoying?
I think they should be permitted to have annoying and hazardous loudspeakers.
Well, I'm just, yeah, you're right, okay. So 102's out.
No, 102, yeah.
102's in.
102's in. Signs. They're going to have often, drive-throughs have signs.
I like 103 too, not, you know, making it, making the drive-through entrance or exit in a manner that doesn't access through a residential neighborhood, or that it doesn't interfere with major thoroughfares. So what's wrong with 103?
103 is probably fine from a safety standpoint. And 104 probably ought to apply. And 105.
Hold on, 103, 104.
102, 103, 104, 105. Uh, 106 doesn't apply.
Nope.
107. I don't think that applies either.
08.
Does. Does apply.
Yep.
I'd go definitely with 110.
Mining activities.
operations.
Drive-through mining.
Truck route, is that-
114.
Yeah, 114 actually, yeah, that's all, shall be maintained in a neat, orderly condition so as to prevent injury to any single property, individual, or the community in general.
Right,
The board may be required to ensure that this condition will be met. Put a bond.
yeah. Perfect example, headlights in a drive-through lane ended up right through into a neighbor's window all the time while the people are standing in line. They have to put up some sort of buffer or whatever to prevent that from happening. Okay.
Cemetery
Probably doesn't apply.
probably doesn't apply.
Now, the drive up, with 117.
I'm catching up with you there.
Okay.
17.
Perfect example. If you're gonna put a drive-through, don't stick it where the pedestrian traffic's gonna be.
Stick it on the
Stick it at the far extremity of the district.
Yeah,
Okay.
So 117.
117. Okay, good.
So 103, 105, 117. Just
102, 103, 104, 105, 108, 114, 117. Campsites, wireless communication antennas.
yeah, or no, it's
Wouldn't 118 apply?
118. That may be.
But you don't want to require them to be do we want the drive-through to be on a major thoroughfare?
Get outside. Right.
No, that would,
I
yeah.
think 18 or 22's out.
Yeah.
Did you want a book?
I have one.
How about
No,
one-
I'm looking on with Greg.
How about 125?
How about 122?
122.
Do we want to make them redo it every year to make sure they're meeting the specifications or not? Or once they get the, once it's approved as a conditional use, it stays? Is that probably how it would work?
Probably.
Okay.
But now we're getting rid of the flexibility issue that you were trying to preserve at the beginning.
No, we're not.
Because
that
you're
We're
gonna
leaving that
allow,
one out.
you're gonna allow a business on a third floor, but you're gonna limit what they can do with their drive-through.
Yeah.
Right. And I think the drive-through should not be on the third floor.
I agree with that.
I think it'd be frowned on generally.
Move the drone.
Well, how about I got 125, how about 126?
You like 125 that they'll meet all county buildings?
Sure, why shouldn't we?
Code?
Isn't that a given?
It is, but I'd like to.
Oh, okay.
No, we can leave it out. I mean, it should be, I mean, if it's a given, it should be a given for any structure, just about.
Yeah, 125.
Do we want to fill, you know, if it's a given, we're really.
What about let's take 125 out. What about 126?
That's more for like a temporary activity or something, that's
Okay.
not for a permanent installation.
Okay.
Group dwellings is out.
Proposed accessory uses to a church, sanitary.
You want to drive up to a church?
No, I'm just reading out loud.
I
I'm
mean,
muttering out loud.
What do we feel?
I don't think you're gonna find anything else.
No, it looks pretty. No. I think we're taking that one out.
Yeah, I don't see anything on this.
Couldn't see anything there. Small wind energy systems.
So read me the ones you have so far.
The ones I have are 102, 103, 104, 105, 108, 114, 117. Ta-da.
Okay.
So you may have to, in your presentation, you have to create a new
Yeah, conditional.
conditional use to add to these that we,
For drive-in, drive-through,
yeah,
drive up, drive out.
which I took off. I took these off. We need another set like this.
Mr. Chairman, I would at this time move that we submit an amendment to the Township zoning resolution to form section 709, an R7 plan mixed use development district, a PMUD, on the terms we've outlined, and the edits to the draft that we discussed here tonight.
Highway Crawford is the scrivener.
Hold on here, so that's Steve moved. And who seconded?
Nobody did, but submit to who?
Well, we're allowed to ourselves, for consideration by the
For consideration.
Into RPC.
and
And
our,
to RPC.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
who's that, John?
Any discussion? I'm going to call the roll. Member Wolf?
No.
Member Rambacher?
Yes.
Member Crawford?
Yes.
And Vice Chairman Harrison?
Yes.
And Member Seeberger, yes. Carries 4-1. Okay. I don't think we have any other business.
Thank God.
Yeah,
Were we supposed to approve the minutes from the last meeting, or do we do
we
that
can do that
tonight?
next time.
Yeah, I didn't do
He
it.
brought
Okay.
that up.
I brought that up earlier, but I didn't.
It's a work session. It's a work session. Good. Thank God. Thanks for the input, guys. Motion to adjourn?
I will submit the motion.
Second.
Okay. Member Wolf?
Yes.
Okay, it carries.
Yeah, unanimous.
Well, yeah, I just